Okay, wonderful. Hi, everybody. Thank you for posting in the chat who you are. As she said, my name is Carissa Hon, and I work at DVIS as their Chief Communications Officer. I will let you know, Sydney, who was my scheduled co-presenter, actually just texted me a minute or two ago, and she had a family emergency, so she is not going to be able to join us today. I know she would love to be here, but she's in the middle of dealing with some things that are just very important for her family. So, but you may be wondering why the Chief Communications Officer, or as I like to call myself, DVIS's word nerd, is talking to you today about the education. I come from a higher ed background. That's where I did quite a bit of work previously to working at DVIS, but as a part of my role at DVIS, I oversee the education department. So we'll get into that a little bit more later, but I work with Sydney and Sean, who are education coordinators in the schools. And so that's why you're talking to me at the moment, or I'm talking to you, I guess. Okay, 1 second. It is for some reason not wanting to go to the next slide.
Carissa, you may have, you can see, yeah, the arrows on the right, on the bottom, on the left, sorry.
Got it.
So this can help you.
Perfect. Thank you. So today what we're going to talk about, I hope everybody finds it helpful. We're going to talk about types of abuse. We're going to talk about identifying some red flags for both victims and perpetrators. We're going to talk about what to do when a student discloses. And then we're going to we have a scenario to talk through if we have time, and then we'll take some questions. Before we get started, though, I do want to give a couple disclaimers. So we will have a time for questions at the end, so I'm going to ask, just to kind of prevent chaos throughout the presentation, if you'll just take your questions and put them into the chat, and then at the end we'll go through them. I certainly don't want you to forget them if you have any. Also, this presentation is very specific to teen dating violence. So child survivors and adult survivors may have some varying experiences, but today specifically we are talking about teen dating violence awareness. Also, throughout this presentation, DVIS tries really hard to make sure we're inclusive. So rather than saying she, her, hers, or he, him, his, we try to refer to partners. And then also, I just want to give a quick trigger warning. If I'm talking about any content that is triggering you and you're feeling anxious, feel free to mute me, pause, step away, whatever you need to do. Okay, so talking about what we do at DVIS. There are two education coordinators at DVIS. We have Sean Jackson, who is our Coaching Boys into Men educator, and he actually goes out into the community. He has the curriculum, the CBIM curriculum. It's actually a 12 session series, and it's 15 minutes a piece. He goes out and specifically teaches male athletes at this point, and we're actually working to try to get that, expand the curriculum, and what we can do for that. But he goes out and we try to make it very minimal, once a week for 15 minutes, so that it's not impacting the athletes. We know they're busy wanting to win and wanting to hone their skills. But again, just making sure we're talking about these subjects, because as we know, they are leaders in these schools. And then we have Sydney, who is our RPE educator. That's rape prevention educator. And she is actually in schools teaching curriculum, talking about what healthy relationships look like, what red flags look like, what is abuse versus unhealthy versus healthy behavior, things of that nature. And so she's teaching students, but she's also doing a significant amount of community level work within that as well. All right, so to start out, I like to kind of talk about, why are we focusing on young people? Why is it so important to educate? One of the stats that isn't in here is the #1 indicator whether or not a child or teenager or whoever will grow up to either be an abuser or a perpetrator of domestic violence, is whether or not they grew in a home where they experienced domestic violence. So it's really important, because we don't know where everyone comes from, and they come from varying backgrounds, that we're aware of this and we're actively working to prevent it. Nearly 1.5 million high school students nationwide experience physical abuse from a dating partner in a single year. Unfortunately, 1 in 3 adolescents in the US has experienced physical violence, sexual, emotional, or verbal abuse from a dating partner. And of those students, that large number that are experiencing that, only 33% of teens who have experienced a violent relationship ever told anyone about the abuse that they experienced. And on top of this, if the teenager did tell someone that they trust about the abuse, only 81% of parents don't believe that teen dating violence is an issue, or don't know that it's an issue. So this is a barrier that a lot of teens are seeing, where even if they're brave enough to tell someone, the adults in their lives may or may not be prepared to talk about it. So talking about what is domestic violence, we just want to make sure that we have a really clear understanding so that we're all on the same page. It's a pattern of abusive behaviors used by one partner to gain power and control over another partner in a relationship. We typically use intimate partner relationship within the context of that, and that could include a current partner, a former partner, or a dating partner. So talking about power and control, this is really important. It varies a lot. This one is actually going to be specific to teen dating violence. We're just going to kind of go through and break it down a little bit. For isolation, you might see obviously, they're trying to keep you from spending time with people who have previously been in your life, whether that's friends or family members. You might see people starting to make passive-aggressive comments like, I don't think so-and-so has your best interest at heart, or I don't think so-and-so is a good influence on you. Again, trying to kind of drive a wedge between friends. Obviously, anger. One partner being angry with the other, blaming them for the anger that they're taking out on the partner, threatening the partner. A huge one that we see within teen dating violence in schools is using social status to try to control. It's really difficult, especially if you have one partner that is more popular than the other partner. They might use that social status to start spreading rumors about somebody, or to start really trying to pressure them to get them to do whatever it is that they want. So that's something that we see very commonly. Blaming the victim for their anger is another one. And I think with this one, a lot of what we see also is we see a lot of minimization in teen dating violence about what's happening, or denying what's happening. And really that goes into gaslighting, right? So that's something that we see a lot of. Again, peer pressure. This can again go into rumors. And then you have sexual coercion. So that can look like, we'll get into this a little bit more, but that can look like purposefully, like refusing to wear a condom, purposefully trying to get someone pregnant, things of that nature. For again, sexual assault, forcing them whenever they don't want to, pressuring them into having sex, things of that nature. So these are typically the tools that people will use in order to create that power and control dynamic and to start controlling their partner. So again, as we're getting into different types of abuse, there's physical abuse, which is what people most commonly associate with domestic violence. But I want to kind of, let's see if I can figure out how to do this. If you want it in the chat, I would love to kind of get some feedback from you guys as far as what you think some of these other types of abuse might look like. So we have physical abuse, which obviously a huge one that we see within schools would be hitting, especially like play hitting, play fighting, things like that. But can actually cause physical harm or can be used for intimidation. But what do you think emotional abuse could look like? I have the chat up so I can see. Any thoughts? Absolutely. So Rebecca says that it could be bullying, and that is 100% something that could be used for emotional. Yes. Amy, you're 100% right. So Amy said threatening to harm oneself if they leave. And I'll say that's actually something that I have written down to highlight in my notes, is that if one, like, that is a huge, huge thing that we see in schools, is threatening to kill yourself or hurt yourself if your partner breaks up with you. Yes, absolutely. Mac says degrading comments about appearance or managing what the partner wears. That is definitely a part of emotional abuse. Jealousy. Yeah, that's a huge thing that we talk about in schools. And it's amazing to me because the general consensus, that seems like when we go into schools and we're like, okay, let's talk about jealousy, most people seem to think that that is almost cute. Like, oh, my partner really cares about me. My partner really wants to be with me. But when somebody is jealous of you, that really means that they don't trust you. And so just having those conversations within schools, that's a huge thing that we see, certainly. And yes, absolutely. Guilting is one of them. Facebook comments, that can definitely go into it. Isolation from friends and family, 100%. Yes, all of these are very, very much to do with emotional abuse. Any thoughts on what sexual abuse can look like? So obviously this can include sexual assault. It can include, yes, rape, absolutely. Pressuring to have sex, so kind of coercion, maybe talking someone into it or making them feel like they have to have sex with you before they're ready or when they've expressed they're uncomfortable. We see a lot of times maybe refusing to, again, as I said, refusing to wear a condom, refusing to allow them to wear use birth control. Yes, so I see that somebody says choking. Absolutely, that could be one partner may want to do that and the other may not. And again, forcing that, fondling without someone's consent. Absolutely, all of that. Videotaping and blackmail. Yes, that is a huge one. And whenever we get to digital, this is something else that we're going to talk about a little bit. But there's a huge pressure in our schools to share nudes, nude photos of yourself with your partner. And a lot of times that backfires. And one partner will use that to control the other, to say, I'm going to share these pictures. I'm going to send them to your parents. I'm going to do whatever that is, to try to, again, maintain that control. Encouraging your partner to be with someone else, or maybe even, this probably goes a little bit more to emotional, but withholding love if they refuse to have sex with you, right? Like withholding affection. Forcing you to kiss in front of teachers. Yes, absolutely. These are all great. Okay, so I'm going to move on. These are all amazing. What about stalking? What do you think stalking could look like? Absolutely coerced threesomes. Absolutely. I would say that goes to sexual assault, or it could as well. So stalking, yes, continual calling and texting. And that's a really big one that we see with students, is that, you know, just kind of talking through, is it normal for someone to text you 50 times a day wanting to know what you're doing, who you're with, exactly, you know, what your conversation was, and like really questioning you? There are a lot of apps, so if they require you to give them, and again, I would say that this is abusive, but a lot of students might require you to give passwords. So this is my cell phone, so whoops. If your partner is requiring you to give you the passwords to their cell phone, they can be installing a lot of software on your phone that might be showing them your keystroke, showing them what you're typing, showing them who you're calling. And they, you know, if they are requiring passwords to social media, again, this goes under digital a little bit. A lot of times they kind of interconnect, but saying, like, looking through all of your messages to see who you're messaging and what you're saying, see who you're commenting on. Again, just like not trusting you, being super jealous. Let's see what else is being said here. Following from afar, absolutely. So maybe you've asked to be left alone and that partner is always around, like you see them in the hallways, or every time you leave class, they're standing outside the door. Things of that nature are certainly stalking and can be really scary. Yes, forcing them to give priority during class, absolutely. Yeah, those are definitely some ways that we see stalking. And even that stalking can be on campus, of course, but it can also be off campus, right? This can be going on both in the classroom and when people are at home, or what, you know, outside of the classroom. Okay, any thoughts? I think digital a lot of times runs into a lot of these other ones, but any other thoughts on what digital abuse could look like? Oh my gosh, Amy, it's like you read my mind. I had a note to talk about this. So talking about, so if someone has access to your phone, like we said, they're requiring passwords and all of those things, they can also force you, or even without your knowledge, turn on your location services. So this can go into digital. This can also go into stalking. So at all times, they know exactly where you are, right? That's definitely something that people can be aware of. And also, like on social media, a lot of times when you're posting, if your location services are on, it'll give a general location as far as like where you are. It may not give the exact address, but it's like within a few blocks of where you are. So again, just being aware of that. As far as digital, again, we talk about here the pressure to send nudes, or maybe even take videos, as somebody previously said. And then again, one partner using that, having that, because unfortunately, once it's been shared out there for the world to see, we all know, like, it's there for all of eternity, right? That can be used against you. So certainly, commenting on your Facebook and posting photos without your permission, absolutely. That is 100% digital abuse. I also think with social media, there's a lot, because of social media, there's a lot of ability to partners to be able to emotionally abuse through social media, to humiliate, to call out, to, again, as we said, like maybe post photos without your consent, things of that nature. That is definitely a huge issue that we see within schools. As far as financial and religious, those last two, I will say those are ones that we don't see as often for teen dating violence, but we wanted to put them in there just so you can be aware. So financial, of course, is going to primarily be if you, yes, exactly. Like if you're borrowing money, or you're requiring your partner to give you all their money, or it goes into a bank account that only you have access to, or almost like bullying or whatever, they get paid and they know that they have to give you money, or things like that. That is a huge one that we see. Typically it's family members more so than dating partners, as far as we have seen, but that's definitely something to still be aware of. Yes, absolutely. Guilt on the partner to buy them things. Or even if we have a student that is constantly bragging about their partner buying them things, especially we know if their partner is significantly older, that's sometimes a red flag to be aware of trafficking as well. Okay, so moving on to religious abuse. Also talking about, sorry, I'm trying to keep an eye on time to make sure I don't go over, because I tend to be a little chatty sometimes. Talking also about religious abuse. So We live in the Bible Belt, as we know. It doesn't have to be Christianity. It can be really any religion, but either forcing someone to practice your religion when they don't want to, or if someone is wanting to practice the religion, not allowing them to practice the religion that they identify with, is typically how we see that playing out. A lot of times too, we'll see religious texts maybe taken out of context to justify abuse. Like I know in the Bible, there's a scripture somewhere that says, like, wives submit to your husbands. So taking that out of context to say, if you don't do this, if you're not submitting to me, I can hurt you and it's okay. Of course, that is not okay. But we do see religious text taken out of context sometimes in order to control. Yes, absolutely, Amy. Sharing secrets through prayer groups or outing them in some way, that is 100% very abusive. And that's something that we see a lot of. There are kind of two caveats that I had in here. So if you're an LGBTQ plus individual, like, the threat of being outed is terrifying. So that is something that is very, very often used to control. Additionally, we have, if someone is an immigrant and maybe their parents are illegal, that's another thing that is used to control. Maybe a partner threatening to call immigration or something like that to try to get their family deported, again, to try to maintain that control. Those are things that we do see, unfortunately. All right. Moving on to the next slide. Okay, so talking about the cycle of violence. There is a very specific cycle that is pretty universally accepted. And so you initially meet, right? And if somebody isn't nice to you to begin with, typically you may not give them the time of day, right? So typically someone who is abusive is going to be very charming, very sweet, very loving to begin with, very maybe just very, very charming. So then once you meet and things are going really well, you're going to go into a tension building phase where the abuser is going to probably be very sensitive and might get angry easily, might start to have some yelling in there, starting to put you down or making some threats towards you, things of that nature. A lot of times in this phase, the victim is going to try to pacify the abuser, just try to like make them happy, try to reason with them or just agree with them, trying to avoid the fight that they can kind of feel coming on. Then we're going to move to the acute explosion. And this is where something super abusive happens, whether that be physical violence or sexual assault or whatever it is. And that's whenever the person might, create a scene and really humiliate them and emotionally abuse them or hurt them in whatever way, shape, or form that looks like. The victim typically within this is either they may, again, try to pacify, they may call the police, they may fight back, they may leave or threaten to leave. Again, every individual is going to respond differently whenever this happens. But then immediately after, we're going to go into a honeymoon stage, right? And this is whenever the person's going to be whoever the individual fell in love with. Whether, they're going to be super sweet and loving, they're going to apologize, say it's never going to happen again, promise that they'll get help, agree to go to church with the person, or agree to go to counseling or whatever that might look like. And I think a lot of times, I think all of us want to believe that whoever we're with, whatever the partner looks like, that they don't want to hurt us, right? They want to make sure that they want us to be happy and they want the best things for us. But unfortunately, we know if somebody has been violent before, it is an escalated risk that they will probably be violent again. So again, this is a cycle that just keeps going and going and going and going and going. So you'll have that honeymoon phase, which will go into tension building again, and then there'll be an acute explosion, and then again, we'll be in honeymoon again. So it just continues, and it it's like a merry-go-round almost. It just keeps coming back around. So so talking about red flags for victims, sorry, my phone rang really for a second. Specifically teen victims, really think of it as anything that if a student is one way, and any big changes in their behavior, in their grooming, in their just the normal things that like as a teacher that you see daily, any big changes in this could be a red flag of abuse. So weight gain or loss, bruises or bite marks or choke marks or anything like that. If a student is normally super engaged and is usually sitting with their friends, and maybe they start sitting with other people or sitting by themselves, or maybe they become really withdrawn, those are all can be red flags. If their grades are falling, they've normally been a straight A or B student, and all of a sudden they're getting D's and F's, that can certainly be a red flag. Changes in self-care, bragging about gifts from their partner, things of that nature as well, that can also be, as I said, a red flag that trafficking could be happening or about to happen. I will say that I don't think Sydney will mind me telling this story. She's told this story at multiple presentations we've been at before, but one of my education coordinators was in schools, and she was making presentations, and there was a student that was always just like well-groomed and took really good care of himself, and one day she noticed that he just was unkept, like just not his norm. And so she, jokingly said something, and it turned out that this student had been kicked out of his house, right? And so he was basically homeless. And so she, at that moment, that was a real learning moment for her, where she was like, oh my gosh, like I should have noticed this as a red flag. This was not just, this was not a laughing matter, not something that I should have brought up this way. So she apologized and was able to connect him with resources and get him help. But again, anything like that, that is a red flag that something is happening. Okay, red flags for perpetrators, because as we know, as you have victims in the classroom, you might also have perpetrators in the classroom. So embarrassing or putting their partner down in class, especially if they're using any sort of threatening wording or even physical threats, like using their, if they're like bigger than their partner, using that as a threatening tool. If they're quick to be anger and they just kind of like explode in class, or will say like something really mean to their partner in class or something. If they're showing extreme jealousy, or like, I know one thing that I've seen when I've gone with Sean or Sydney into schools sometimes is they'll, like sometimes the partner will just take their other partner's phone and start going through it in the middle of class. That can also be a red flag. Again, of extreme jealousy. Maybe if you just see that the one partner is like very like forcing them to walk to and from class with them, or with them at all times, waiting outside the bathroom even if they're in there, that can certainly be a red flag. Controlling who their partner gets to speak to or hang out with, that's a huge one that speaks to isolation. And then, as we said, controlling partner's phone usage in class, either texting them and like being mad if they're not texting back, or telling them not to text, or whatever it is. Again, looking through it, those are all red flags that you might have a perpetrator. Okay. So I want to make sure that we're giving you all tools, so that now that you kind of have these red flags to look for, we've talked about the cycle of violence, we've talked about the types of abuse and things of that nature. If a student, if you notice changes in a student, you may pull them aside, or maybe you're a partner. I know we had some of you guys from youth services on this call, and they're talking to you and maybe disclosing. Like, we just want to make sure that we're giving you tools of how to respond if a student discloses to you. So first off, it's very important that you're giving them the opportunity to informed consent. So making sure that they understand what they are about to do. I know Sean and Sydney and I have had conversations, and a lot of times if a student is about to disclose to you, you know it's coming. They may have previously, like as they're working up to it, have kind of come to you and given you some theoretical scenarios that you may be suspicious is them, but say, hey, my friend is having this happening, what should they do, or whatever. So if you have the feeling that you think that they're about to disclose to you, again, just say, hey, I want to let you know every adult over 18 in the state of Oklahoma is a mandated reporter. And if you tell me this, I'm going to have to report any abuse that you tell me to DHS. And then maybe telling them what that could mean, the implications. Not that you're discouraging them to report to you, but again, just so that they're informed of what is going to happen when they disclose to you. And then maybe, kind of even giving them the opportunity if they disclose so that they can be involved in the process, because a lot of times it can feel very like everything is out of their control. So giving them the opportunity, if you're going to have to make the call, to make the call with you so that they know what was said. Giving them the opportunity, I think that that's also a very good option. So here are some things to do, and then after this we have some don'ts of disclosure. The first is make sure that you're remaining composed. A lot of times, we probably all experience this. I know I did growing up, but whenever something happens and your parents get really mad, and or whoever, teacher, whatever, and it's not because they're mad at you, like they're mad at the situation, but it feels like they're mad at you in the moment, right? So it's important that you're keeping that in mind, because even for adults that know they're being abused, it's really, really difficult for them to share that with somebody. So again, you want to make sure that you are we're skipping one, we'll go back, but you're affirming them and you're remaining calm. So again, make sure the child knows that it's in no way their fault, because again, if they're still children, they might be teenagers, they don't like to be called that, maybe young adults, but they're still underage. So making sure that they know it's not their fault. Also letting them know that you believe them. And I will say for adult survivors, this is key as well, because the majority of people who share their story and tell you that they're abused, it's like a very low percentage. I want to say it's between 2 and 10%. And the last statistic that I saw that lie about abuse, and it's actually pretty rare for people to lie about abuse. So again, making sure that they know that you believe them. Giving the child autonomy, just realizing, hey, this is not my story to tell. This is the person who disclosed story to tell, and making sure that you are just not going around and telling everyone about it. Giving that individual the right and the opportunity to tell who they want when they want in their own time. Obviously, you have to do your reporting, and you have to be aware of your school policy to know who you need to talk to, who your Title IX coordinator is, and things of that nature, and so that you're following policy, but also realizing beyond that it is the student's story to tell. Okay, the don'ts of disclosure. So don't overreact or panic. When you're discussing the experience that's happening, I know that again, one of my education coordinators was sitting in when a disclosure happened, and the disclosure, I don't know who they disclosed to, my education coordinator and one other person at the school. And this person at the school just got so emotional. I mean, they were just like crying and bawling, and the student wasn't crying or bawling. And so again, it creates this very uncomfortable dynamic for the victim whenever you're freaking out and you're unable to keep your cool and you're not composed. And, the students almost then put in a position where they feel they need to comfort you for something that's happened to them. So again, you need to really make sure that you are keeping composed for the sake of that student. I know it can be really difficult sometimes, especially if you're hearing something really hard, but it's very, very important. Also making sure that you're not pressuring the student for details. Let them talk about what has happened to them in their own way and at their own pace, because again, if you force information, it can hurt the trust that's going on between you. It can make them feel betrayed. It can have a lot of negative impacts. So again, just recognizing, I know it can be difficult not to sometimes want to really press for additional details, but again, just letting them say that in their own way, in their own timing. Don't make promises. This is a huge one. I think as adults, we feel this huge pressure that when a student discloses something to us, to say, it's going to be okay, you made the right decision, don't worry, you're going to be fine. But calling DHS to make that to make that report will probably turn that student's life upside down, and we can't discount that. We don't know what's going to happen if DHS becomes involved in this student's life, and you can't promise that it's going to be okay. You can't promise the situation is going to be resolved in a way that that student is going to think is okay. So again, making sure that you aren't making promises that you really have no control over to keep. Because again, that's going to tear down the trust that you have with that student. Also, making sure that you're not making assumptions. It's sometimes hard for us to not jump to conclusions about what the child needs to do to fix it or things like that. But again, recognizing it's the student's story to tell, and allow them the space to tell it in their own way. One thing that we try to practice is that if a student discloses to us, is we will listen, and then we will repeat back our understanding of what that student told to us to make sure that we are understanding it correctly. And that way, that gives the student the opportunity to then be able to correct us if we're understanding something wrong, or if we're making an assumption that maybe we don't even realize that we're making. All right, and then we also want to talk about what the student might be feeling. The student may be feeling very powerless. A lot of times, if they've been victimized in some way, shape, or form, their power has already been taken from them. So they probably have an ongoing sense of not feeling in control of their life and feeling very vulnerable. So this is something to be very aware of. That's again why it's so important to allow the student to tell their story in their way, in their time, and to like really own that and to control who and when and how that is gone. Of course, like while still making sure that you are like reporting to the correct people and following school policy. But beyond that, they may feel very betrayed and have difficulty trusting people. They may doubt people's good intentions, even your good intentions, again, just because their trust has been betrayed so egregiously. They may feel stigmatized and feel shame or feel damaged if they've been sexually assaulted, or maybe if they've just been really traumatized and they keep getting triggered and they're having a hard time. That might lead to them just feeling like they are less than or not in a good place. Also, there's traumatic sexualization, so they may begin to associate sexuality or sexual behavior with fear or pain or just negative things rather than pleasure and intimacy and choice. So again, we need to just be aware of that as well, because that can have a very deep impact on a student's psyche. Okay, so we have one scenario here that I thought might be helpful. We have about 5 minutes before I need to open it up for questions. But I thought that it might be helpful to kind of, I'm a very experiential person, and well, I like brainstorming and running ideas off of people. So I thought we could kind of look at a scenario and talk through in the chat how you might handle it or the things you might be thinking of, just to give us an idea of how to maybe handle these situations. This is not specifically a disclosure. This is a different scenario, but it also has to do with, I think, just healthy relationships and behavior. So at lunch, you hear a group of students telling rape jokes and you feel uncomfortable with the things being said. What could you do to stop that behavior? I'm opening the chat so that I can see what people say. So there's several different ways that you can really play dumb. I don't get it with a blank stare. That's a good one. Hey, I know her. Hi, Hannah. Say it's inappropriate. Yeah, just be very direct. Go to the table and let them know that their jokes are inappropriate. Yeah. So there's several different ways you can handle it. And everybody handles confrontation in a different way. A lot of people, I think that some of you here might be pretty direct about it, just to say like, hey, this is not okay and this is why, and maybe bring some context to them as far as like, hey, you don't know who is sitting at this table and what their experiences are. You don't know for a fact that everyone here has not experienced sexual assault, and this may not be triggering them. I know that we have had students then push back and say things like, well, nobody here has been, I know for a fact. And then you can kind of say, you don't really know. Do you think that if your friend had been sexually assaulted, knowing that you do rape jokes, knowing that you think this is funny, that you're going to be the person that they tell? And then usually the students are like, no. And then you can start a good discussion. For me, I tend to, I'm either super direct or I'm not. I'm like two extremes and I don't know why. Oh, Amy said something. As a youth, empower them to leave the group and talk to a trusted adult. Yes, absolutely. So maybe taking a student aside, I think it just depends, because you can have a conversation about it. You can maybe pull someone aside and say, hey, I really don't think that was funny, especially if it was only one student. Or maybe even talking to the whole group about, hey, if you're laughing at this, that one student who is doing it thinks it's funny. That one student thinks that you're okay with them telling jokes like that. Just kind of helping them to kind of think through their actions and the ramifications. As a youth, empower them to leave the group and talk to a trusted adult. Absolutely. Restoration meetings. Oh, that's a cool idea. School night. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that idea. So Rhonda is saying to let them know that they're going to have a restoration meeting with the counselors and students to be able to discuss like why they think this is okay and be able to talk through it. We're really getting to some restorative justice. That's pretty cool. Some people may not feel as comfortable. If you're a teacher, you probably do feel pretty comfortable with direct, but some people may not. So you can also go get someone. So if it's a fellow student that overhears this maybe and they don't feel comfortable, then they can go get maybe a teacher to kind of have them intervene so they can delegate. They may want to, again, I have a lot of friends that tend to be more of the, somebody said it earlier, just talking about playing dumb, or just maybe just questioning and being like, why do you think that's funny? I don't really think that's very funny. Can you explain to me how that's funny? And then it's very difficult to say like, oh, rape is funny, right? Like to really make them start thinking through that and like, oh, maybe this isn't funny. Yeah, those are some. You can also distract, which is kind of, if you're not feeling, because again, if you ever feel unsafe physically, like someone might hurt you if you're intervening, you may want to go towards distraction, and again, trying to like get that person away, trying to help them, offering them help if they can need it, or maybe even just checking in with them later and saying, hey, I'm so sorry, like, especially if you know there's a survivor at the table, being like, that was not okay, I didn't want to out you, but again, do you need anything, are you doing okay, things of that nature. Let's see. Rhonda, I like your style, saying she'll make them explain the joke out loud to her and smile. It's pretty direct. Okay, so again, you guys have some really good ideas for how to address this. I'm going to open it up now just for any questions. We have about 14 minutes left before we're done. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. Just go ahead and put them in the chat, or if you want, you can unmute and directly ask me, whatever you feel more comfortable with.
Well, Carissa, thank you so much. There is a question here. How young have you seen students with dating violence?
So we are only allowed to go down to 6th grade whenever we're in schools. So it's 10 to 25 is our age range. I will say we have done multiple presentations at the 6th grade level, and it's already an issue in 6th grade. So actually we were really disappointed, and we did some work with the school that we were at, but we did a presentation probably about a year ago. And immediately after the presentation, they had an incident where a male student pulled a female student into, I think, the boys' bathroom or something, and fondled her. So it was it's an issue already in 6th grade. And so I then feel like I can say it's probably an issue even younger than that, though I don't know that definitively. But I mean, young. Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess Rebecca replied yes, and we have a new question now. Any pointers for educating youth on dating violence? It sounds like you do presentations. As adults, what else can we do to continue educating youth?
Yes. So I can get on my soapbox and talk about this for a long time, but I'll try to keep it minimal, or not minimal, but short, not so long-winded. I will say, as adults, one of the biggest things that we can do is be willing to have these conversations. I know that they're uncomfortable. I know they're hard, but ultimately what we're seeing is students in school who are not educated on healthy relationships. No one's ever had these conversations with them before. And so DVIS is in schools trying to have these conversations, but I think that as adults in these children's lives, we already need to be having these conversations with them so that they're aware and they can protect themselves. As far as how to educate youth on dating violence, I think that it's something that is so stigmatized. I think just, again, acknowledging that it happens and saying, hey, I want you to be aware, because I want you to have the tools whenever you are growing up, whenever you're dating someone, to recognize this is a scary behavior, this is not normal, this is not healthy, and to be able to protect yourself. So again, just being willing to have these conversations with students, I think, is very, very important. And I think honestly that's the best thing you can do, because we can be in schools reinforcing and teaching and talking and having these conversations, and but I think that it's really important that we're at home, that students are getting it as well. Also, I will say we're working really hard right now to try to create a student leadership council, because we think that peer-to-peer education is also very important, where students are kind of saying, like, here's the issues that we're facing, here's what we want to know about, here's what we want to talk about. Because at every single school that we go to, it's interesting. They face the same issues, but they face them differently, if that makes sense. So again, really being able to cater it per school and have student leaders that are then taking a stand. Because as we know, because high school is so about popularity and so about social status and things of that nature, I think to really have it become a culture within the schools where students are really taking initiative and we're seeing buy-in is something that is very beneficial and can make a big difference.
Also, I must say, Carissa, if it's okay, that Haruv started a simulation that is specific for this topic. And we had a collaboration also with Carissa that came to us to give us this lecture. It's called In Their Shoes. It's about teen violence dating. It's a simulation based on cards that each card is a different story. And it was prepared specially for teenagers. And we have all kinds of stories. All of them are based on true stories. And they get the new identity they are getting inside the shoe of a teenager girl or a boy. And they need to read the card, and then they need to choose what to do. Then they have all kinds of options that they can choose, and each option that they choose lead to another results or to another things that they need to do. And after we are finishing this, we have debrief and discussion about this, and it's all based on a true story of teenagers that suffered from dating violence. So if your school or your place would like to do it, you can contact us, me or Esther, in the email, and we can describe more about this and think about how to do it. Mm-hmm. And this is a way that the teenager can really practice and discuss it.
It was a very cool program, I'll say. I got to go and kind of go through it and see how it worked, and it was very realistic, I would say, and also just very impactful.
Well, Carissa, I see there is one comment from Renee. We have had disclosures in the 4th grade.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's tough. Are there any other questions or anything?
Well, there is a question. Rhonda, do you think our students would benefit from the cards? I suppose it's a question for Rhonda.
Or maybe it was supposed to be in the private chat. You don't need to answer this. You can discuss between yourselves. Okay, do we have any more questions, or we can say goodbye?
Well, Rhonda replied, yes, some would.
Thank you, Rhonda. Okay, thank you, Carissa. Thank you so much for your time. And if someone has any questions after this lecture, I know that sometimes questions are coming later. You can email Carissa. Carissa, maybe you can write your email in the chat.
Sure.
Or you can email us and I will forward it to Carissa. This is also a possibility. May we all have a great week. Stay safe and see you in our other lectures. And thank you, Carissa, so much for your time.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.